Hello, everybody. It's your host, Mike Epstein. Welcome to another episode of Speaking of the Arts. We have a great episode for you today. Today, we are featuring Lydia Liebman of Lydia Liebman Promotions. Lydia is a publicist specializing in the jazz genre and works with a large roster of amazing artists. If you go to lydialiebman.com, you can see who she's working with and some of the amazing success stories she's had for her clients. And in this episode, Lydia and I talk all about the world of PR. Why should an artist hire a publicist? What does a publicist do? How has the role of the publicist changed since Lydia has been doing this for over a decade now? All these questions and more are answered. I am grateful to Lydia for her time and really enjoyed speaking with her. I think you're going to learn a lot. Without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Lydia Liebman. Lydia, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mike. It's so great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you and have everybody learn about all the great stuff you're doing in the world of PR for jazz musicians, not just jazz musicians, just great artists in general. And so, just by way of background, I want to put it out there how you and I first met. I
Yeah,
don't actually remember the year, but I think it's safe to say, if I had to guess, do you think it was 2012, 2011,
I think it would have been 20.
10?
I think it actually, well, I think it would have maybe been 2013, maybe.
Okay,
Yeah, maybe 2012.
2013.
13 or 12, but it was around there. It was a long time ago.
That's right. Yes, I was working at the Kurland agency, and you were there during the summer as an intern, right? And we got to meet. And then if it was 13, I would have left pretty soon because I had been there for 6 years and
Yeah.
decided I was going to just dive off the deep end and start my own little agency. But regardless, it's been fun to stay in touch and be friends and just kind of watch each other's growth. So, yeah, so I want to turn it over to you. Tell me a little bit about like what initially got you interested in PR and doing this for artists.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you again for having me. And yes, fond memories at Ted Kurland. I'm pretty sure I cleaned out your desk when you left. So, so there's that.
Hopefully, it
Uh,
wasn't too dirty.
no, it was actually very well organized, and there were a lot of like nice CDs over there. That's what I remember. I
Okay.
particularly remember the CDs. Anyway, so what got me into PR? Interesting because you mentioned Kurland. I mean, the truth is that when it comes to kind of like the ancillary roles for for an artist, whether that's like management or booking or PR, whatever. The truth is that this isn't like why I went into PR, but the more that I like think about it and reflect about it and think about my past experiences, I really don't think that I have like what it takes to be a booking agent, to be 100 with you. I think that it is a really specific personality that I am not that. I don't really think that, management is something that really calls to me either. There's just something about that dynamic that I have so much respect for. I also know that my own personality is probably not like the best thing for me. It is kind of coincidental that I kind of found my path in PR. Considering, yeah, I did not wake up one day and was like, I want to be a publicist. I got into this by way of, well, first of all, through osmosis of just being in a musical family. Both of my parents are musicians, and most of my friends and most of the people that I was around growing up were musicians and jazz musicians specifically. So there was always kind of that. I went to school originally at Emerson College for political communications, did that for one semester and was like, this is not for me. And I transitioned into producing for film, television, and radio. And I also was taking classes at Berkeley. So I sort of had this kind of like jumped into this media thing by way of just my jazz experience being there. And I really started with radio. Loved doing that. I loved having artists on my show. I had a jazz program on Emerson's radio station. I just loved it. And that was my first awareness like brought to me about how you actually promote something officially. So like receiving press releases, getting, one sheets in the mail, getting to know these radio promoters that are now like dear colleagues of mine. That was really how it started. So it was through that. And then over time, I started learning more and more about like a publicist as a job and seeing what that entails. I always mention Anne Braithwaite in Boston as being like a wonderful kind of mentor and kind of unofficially sort of like just showing me the ropes. And that was basically how I got there. It was really like just sort of like a natural transition of me kind of starting on the radio and then like promoting shows for my friends, and then those shows turned into albums, and then eventually I kind of like learned enough to say that I can do this. And then it's been now what? I don't know, like 13 years, or it's been a while. So that's how it kind of got started. It wasn't like intentional, but that's where I ended up.
Yeah, you mentioned Anne. She's great. I've worked with her on a
Yeah.
handful of projects and artists, and she always delivers and is so wonderful. What about her has made her a great mentor for you?
Anne is awesome because something I really respect about Anne is that she's just to the point. She just wants to do a great job. She doesn't get absorbed in drama. She doesn't really like, she has like kind of like a very kind but no nonsense sort of approach that I think is what we need in this business. And something that I really appreciate about her was like when I was kind of getting started, I mean, I really it's not like again, like I didn't like say, okay, I'm going to be like a PR person like Anne. It was just that I just sort of learned about the job through her. And she was super, super nice to me about it. She was always very welcoming. My husband and I would spend like time with her and her husband at their house in Lincoln. Like, we would have lunch with them. Like, it was just like, I just felt such a welcoming, wonderful vibe from her. And I think that that is just like how she operates. And people just really love working with her because of that. And I had just like a really good role model in that, like, this is how like a really good, professional, amazing publicist can be. And I'm just so grateful that like we have such a great relationship. And honestly, I mean, when people come to hire me, a lot of the time I'm like, did you try Anne first? I'm like, is she too busy? I'm always kind of like, well, we'll make sure, that you try her because she's like the queen. So I just love her. And I'm really grateful that she was just so welcoming and cool. And that's something that not can't say that about everybody in this field. So it's really kind of her. And I just love her.
Right. One thing you said earlier, and I'm realizing I was not aware of this. Obviously, familiar with your father and his work and his legacy on this music. I didn't know your mom was a musician. What does she play?
Yeah, so my mom is a jazz oboist and she's
Okay.
amazing. She's really incredible. She's also this like ear training aficionado. Like she's like a genius ear training teacher, and there's been so many people that studied with her, and when they were like in high school and they were approaching college, and then they get to college and they pass out of all of the harmony and ear training classes because they just took it with her and she got them so advanced. So
I
she's
really could have used this in
really
music school because
I
ear
know.
ear training was brutally hard for me. I still
Oh,
have
me
bad
too.
dreams about those classes.
Oh,
I
oh,
wish I had known your
oh.
mom.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like I took ear training in harmony. The hardest thing is to take, lessons with your parents. So,
Yeah,
despite my mom being like, a genius at this type of thing, myself still struggled with ear training and harmony and at Berkeley. Yeah, my nightmares still like originate from those classes. But yeah, she is really killing at that. So, she was when I was growing up, like my dad, of course, was doing his thing, but my mother was also teaching all the time, and she had students in and out of the house all the time. My mom also had a book business. She was a distributor of like music textbooks for most of the conservatories and major schools. So she was also like doing Berkeley Press, and she was this company was called Advanced Music, and so she would do like all the Hal Crook books and like all this stuff. So basically, like I had this dynamic at home that was like my dad, doing his thing, my mom doing her thing, both of them running their own businesses, basically. My mom, would go to all the conventions and stuff and had her whole thing. So I like grew up like, in January, which is our convention time now, that was my mom getting ready for IAJE, and I would like help her like put her newsletters together, So it's just something that's always kind of been in the family, and it definitely comes from both of them that I ended up here, I think.
right, right. I can see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So, what does PR look like in 2026? And just not to ask such a lofty question, but how has it also changed since you started your career?
Yeah, so when I got things kind of underway, I like to say that the first time that I like took money for a gig to promote it was I think I say it's 2011. So it's been now like yeah, like 15 years. I mean, holy crap, yeah, 15 years. A lot has changed, I will say that like when I was coming up, I was still kind of like on the cusp of like kind of the world we are now and the world prior. So, 2011, it's like we've already had, about over a decade of like this digital world taking over and changing everything. But I was still like designing physical flyers, printing them out, and physically putting them up at like 100 locations across Boston and Cambridge. Like I was still doing that. And that was still like an important part of it, that guerrilla marketing stuff. So there was a lot of that, and the digital stuff was also happening, but it was still sort of like divided, where like you would have like a publicist focused on traditional print and you'd have maybe someone focused on digital. Now it's definitely all under the same umbrella. And the biggest thing that has changed is kind of like the decline of like the blog era and the rise in playlisting and the streamers being like kind of its own driver of media, or a driver of attention rather. Um, so when I was kind of coming up, when I really started to get into this seriously, I would say it was when I moved to New York in 2014. Um, in late 2015, 2016, Megan Stable from Revive Music had hired me to sort of help them with some stuff at Revive. And that was such an interesting moment because they were so immersed in that world. They had the Revive blog, and it was like OK Player, and all this stuff was just like super big at the time, and getting like premieres for videos. And it was a different world. And there was a lot more opportunity in a way, even though things were kind of starting to really decline on the traditional side. Now it is a totally different world where media has had so much consolidation. There is just, one company that like kind of owns everything, in general. Newsrooms are being gutted. Obviously, like politically, we're losing a lot of funding. So all those NPR stations, the small ones that are the local affiliates that actually are the lifeblood of supporting jazz, like they're all like going through it. So we're right now, I feel like the state of PR is pretty it's a challenge because it's kind of like, well, like how do we do our jobs if there's no one for us to pitch to? So for me, it's like I'm constantly kind of trying to like retool it to figure out like the best way to get our clients, in front of people. And that means, getting really creative with the ideas and the stories. It means being really creative about who you're pitching and how you pitch them. Identifying folks that maybe don't really like jazz or know much about jazz, but maybe they're close to like the topic at hand that the artist is trying to convey. That's always been the thing, but now I just feel like it's even more because there's so limited opportunity. So you really have to like make those pitches count. It's yeah, it's a complicated answer because so much has changed, and depending on who you talk to, like everyone's experience is different in PR and in the media. But it is hard. I mean, the bottom line is it's changed a lot and it's changing every day, and you constantly have to adapt just all the time.
Yeah. Um, I'm curious. Okay, so from the artist perspective,
Mhm.
why should, if I was an artist,
Mhm.
why should I think in general about investing in a publicist?
Yeah. I mean, I think it kind of comes down to, first of all, like evaluating what your goals are. I mean, I think that PR, for it to be the most effective, works over time. Ironically, like the way that I kind of structure my stuff is kind of project by project. So I am doing it project by project, where it's like we're working on one thing for specific amount of time, and then either the artist like moves on to something else, or it just like it ends, and then maybe we'll come back with this artist on a new project later. I find that like consistency is key, and continuously like engaging in the PR machine in a cadence is effective. If you just sort of like put something out and do this amazing blitz and then like they don't hear from you for a long time, it's kind of like what happened to them? So I think that, the first thing is how committed, not like how committed is the artist to it, but like how do you see this working? Is this something that you see as being a long-term investment that you're going to continuously build on, as your career progresses? Or is this something that you just kind of want to do a one and done and be like, okay, I just like want to hit really hard on this and like take over everything, with like this one project. And that's just not how it works. It takes time. So when it comes to like, should an artist even invest in PR? I think it comes down to like, first of all, like what are the goals? Are they realistic? And is it a publicist that can get you toward those goals? A lot of the time, people will talk to me and I'm like, you know what? I actually think that hiring a publicist is not the right move. I think you should invest in digital marketing. Or I'll be like, look, I love your project. I love you. You're amazing, but I can't do anything with this unless you get like a booking agent or unless you get at least a couple dates to help support it. Like, even if they're just like club dates, get me anything. So there's all these other factors that have to like be into play, that come into play rather when it's time to decide, is it a worthwhile investment? But I think in the end, like the bottom line is if you have a new project and you have the support system in place, whether that is you handling everything or other team members, whatever, you got a new project and you want people to hear it. And by people, I mean like media people that will help tell your story to the audience. It's worth investigating hiring a publicist because I think that that is like the first step. Often like before getting a manager, before getting a booking agent, it's like you kind of need to like start somewhere, and that is the right place to start. But whether it's the right time in your career is another question, and that's all depends, on the situation.
So outside of a traditional album release, what are some examples of projects that you work on with artists?
Outside of album releases,
Right.
I'm generally, so for me, it's generally there's an album. There usually is always an album, because
Okay.
there has to be something new. Now, sometimes there'll be special things where maybe there's like, there's organizations that I work with where it's different. I'm also the publicist for the DC Jazz Festival. I'm also the publicist for Birdland Jazz Club. Like that's a very different situation, obviously, because we're dealing with a venue and a place and other stuff. So that's different. But with artists, for me, I've gotten pretty rigid, honestly, and like what I am willing to take. And 99.5% of the time, there has to be like a new album or something else. Like I've worked with Kurt Rosenwinkel where he was like doing an kind of an re-releasing an album, but also a book. It's like, okay, so there's that. Sometimes there'll be artists that are transitioning into other career phases. Like maybe now they're doing like a big teaching thing, or maybe they are doing something else. In which case, like maybe it makes sense to amplify that for them. But I'm always pretty honest, like about what the return is on that. There's no album to review, so there's a lot less like press possibilities for them. So yeah, it's mostly starts with a new album for me, most of the time.
Okay. Will artists hire you to do single releases over time? Because a lot of artists do that now as opposed to putting the whole album out at the
Yeah.
same time.
I don't deal with singles. Now,
Okay.
not because they're not worthwhile, it's just because the purpose is like the purpose of it is different. I feel that singles are essential. I feel like you should definitely do them.
Hmm.
I think it's a lot like the purpose of that though is to really help on the distribution side for playlisting and keep the machine fed as far as the digital stuff, the DSPs, the Spotify and Apple Music and all of that. They're very helpful for us. Obviously, when we are, doing an album campaign, we're starting really early. We're starting usually 3 months before. So by that time, if there's like singles that are going to be out into the marketplace as we are doing our pitches and stuff, it's really like helpful. So it helps our process, but it's not part of our process in that like I'm not doing dedicated stuff around singles. Now there are some publicists that'll do a press release for every single that comes out. Again, working in jazz, there's just not that many opportunity for those singles to be covered on a regular basis. And frankly, I find it to be kind of like often not a waste of resources, but there are better ways to spend that time rather than doing a new press release for every single and then pitching a single for coverage when the full album is really like what we are focused on. Since that has a longer life and there's more to kind of get out of that than like the one song. So
Okay,
that's
that
just my
makes sense.
take. Yeah, other publicists have different takes, definitely, but that's just my experience, and what has worked for us and not.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned a few things that it's clear what you're looking for in a prospective new client in terms
Yeah,
of is there an actual album that they are looking to put out? Do they have some sort of touring history? What does the rest of their team look like, if
yeah,
anything like that?
yeah.
On the other side of that, what are some of the things you found that an artist is looking for in you when they hire you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that that answer has also changed a lot over time because I think that, of course, like, okay, in the beginning, and I say maybe I'd say like pre-pandemic because I feel like for me and like for Lydia Liebman Promotions as an entity and just like the general vibe, I feel like for me, like, the company navigating the pandemic was so important, and I feel like we did it well. And that the result of that work like set me up to do a kind of a, how do I put this? Like to do not a better job, but like I feel like we came out on the other side of that looking pretty good, in that we got a lot of artists, like shepherd them through the pandemic. Like Lakeisha was one of them, Tana Alexa was another. I mean, these are artists that like released like on the cusp of that, and we kind of got them through that, and was able to sort of like rise above what was going on. And so for me, getting through that, I think it kind of like even instilled some confidence like in myself, where it's like I'm basically get on the phone with an artist and I'm like, look, this is like what is happening in the media climate right now. Like, this is what's up. This is how much it costs to hire me. This is the ROI like that I see for you. Do you want to like participate in this experiment or not? And being super honest about like what it is. So I think that most artists that are coming to me, first of all, a lot of them have worked with me before. They've worked with me for years. If a new artist is coming to me, chances are like a lot of their friends, colleagues, like, bandmates have worked with me and they know what to expect. I definitely have like a way of working. I have my way of doing it. I'm not super corporate. I have a small team, and I think that they're coming to me because they want to have that experience. Knowing that that experience means that like they're not going to get a report every week because I don't have time to do that. And I know I'm going to be very intentional in who I go after. Like, you might come to me like, I want to be in like food and beverage publications, and I'll be like, that's great, that is not my specialty, and that's not something that I most of the time I'm going to feel is a good use of my time, unless like the story does actually make sense for that, and it does make sense for me to do that. So basically, to answer your question, I think that initially people came to me because they're looking to get their album reviewed by Downbeat, or they want to like get on Tiny Desk, or they want to, be on TV. I mean, whatever. Now of course, they want those things, but I also think that there's something to be said with just kind of like working with me and having that specific vibe, and that being on our roster. I think that that means something to some people, So I think that it's changed, and I think that the definition of publicist has certainly changed. I feel more like a media strategist these days versus like a publicist. Like, I think that it has definitely changed based on the track record we have and just the way that I do stuff. But some people it doesn't work for them. We work together and we're like, yep, that was not it. And that's okay too. Everyone's different and it's fine. But I think though too, sometimes people come to me and they're like, I want to go viral or
Mhm.
I want to like do something social. And I'm like, well, that's not actually like what I'm doing for you. Like, I can help guide you to help you get closer to that. But that's not something that anybody can, flip a lever and make you go viral. I mean, I guess you can if you're like, on a major label, but yeah. So there's some things I just have to tell them that's not part of the job.
Yeah, that's kind of similar to the way we kick
I'm
off a
sure.
relationship with an artist,
Yeah.
being really realistic about what's possible, but also, as you mentioned this earlier, it's always about the artist's goals
Yeah.
and making sure they are clear on what those goals are. And then obviously for us coming to the table and helping them realize their goals. I would assume if we're just comparing like the role of a booking agent to the role of a publicist side by side, on the one hand, our job, uh, or knowing if we are successful in our job is probably more straightforward because
Yeah.
that comes down to, shows, tours, fees, larger venues, all of that, right? Are we seeing the growth across the board in those areas? How
Right.
do you define success for your clients then when again, just as an observer, it seems like it would be more nebulous and not as clear.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, of course, like there's some stuff that's like concrete, are they getting coverage or not? And it's like, is that coverage good coverage? Is it like, is it substantial coverage? I mean, when you're starting with an artist for the first time, there's nothing to really compare it to except their past experiences with either working with another publicist or, you know, like doing it on their own or doing it without a publicist. So like, I mean, there's always going to be like something to hopefully compare it to unless they're like new. But then it's like to compare to their expectations, which is a whole other thing. So I think that like to measure success, Uh, First of all, compared to how they did the last time, okay, are they getting more than the last campaign, whether we did it or someone else did? Are they getting
And
different?
just sorry, just to clarify,
Yeah,
more, you mean more interviews, more like what does that
anything.
mean? Okay.
Anything. Are they getting more features? Are they getting more reviews? Are they getting more interviews? Are they getting more radio play if that's something that they want to focus on? I mean, literally, whatever it is, like, are they
Mhm.
getting more? Or is there more interest in them?
Right.
Um, for me, like, again, so much of it is internal and so much of it is like based on vibes. So I can have an artist that I'm pitching to the same journalist over and over, years and years. And I notice that they keep opening the emails. I notice that they keep downloading it. Every project, maybe they're getting a little bit closer. And it's kind of like up to the universe, basically, it's honestly for the timing to be right, for something to turn into something. I talk about this all the time about how long it took to get Lakeisha, booked for the Late Show with Colbert. That took a really long time, because it took a lot of like staying on their case and just sort of updating them with things that they've gotten to make it updating them with things that she had gotten to prove like why it was worthy for them to have a jazz artist on their show. It took a while to do that, but to me, even getting them to open the email the first time was already like, okay, like that's even a mark of success because like now that name is like on someone's radar. So it's kind of hard. But from a concrete way, it's like, okay, well, are they getting reviews? Are they getting interviews? Are they getting press? Internally, though, I'm always just kind of looking to see like, are the right people opening this email? Are the right people downloading this? Am I getting asked questions by people that later might be able to do something else? So a lot of it is just kind of keeping track of like what the vibes are, which is really hard to explain to someone when they're like, was my campaign successful? I mean, I also then have a lot of artists that sometimes I think that we could have done better. Like I'm like, damn, I really wish like we could have gotten XYZ. Or like I know that like what's possible. Like, okay, we got this, but I wish we would have gotten that. But they come to me and they're like, oh my God, like this has been the most amazing experience ever. Like my entire life has changed. Like, thank you so much. And I'm like, oh, great. Like glad you feel that way, and I feel that way too. But I'm also kind of like, oh, okay, phew, like, because I know I was like, oh, but I wish like we could have gotten this person to say yes. But I
Right.
think most artists like these days are cool because the vibe check is so important. Like before I take anybody on as a client, like if I've never worked with them before, like I'm getting on the phone and I'm like, I want to know like what their deal is. And if I feel like we can kind of like work together well, then it'll be okay. But if I get a feeling like, ooh, I don't know if like realistic expectations are here, I don't know if they'll ever be happy. If that's the vibe, then I'm like, I don't care who it is. I'm like, no, my mental health is the most important. And I,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Protect your mental health.
Yeah, like you just can't. Some people will never be happy, and some people like, they'll never feel like they got enough. And to some people, like the greatest success is not success. Like it's just like they'll always want more, and I totally get that. And I think that that's good because it drives people to keep doing stuff. But after a certain point, it's like we're either doing a good job or we're not. It's like I know we're doing a good job, so if you can't see that, I'm like, well, maybe then it's just not meant for us to work together.
Yeah. When I think about sort of iconic press outlets like, New York Times, Wall Street
Yeah,
Journal, NPR, music, et cetera, those kind of things that are those pillars,
yeah,
what is the frequency with which those outlets will feature an artist? And so
yeah,
just by comparison, in the booking world, if an artist is selling tickets, then it is totally reasonable to expect that that venue where they're selling really well, they could go back every 12 months, right?
yeah,
Maybe even more. But in the that's kind of in the hard ticket world, right? Theaters, clubs, et cetera, et cetera. In the fine arts world, it's different, right? Because those performances are subsidized by different sources of funding. And
right,
so it's okay that an artist might not actually sell half the house, right? The organization is more interested in the story of the artist and some of those other considerations. So my question is, yeah, what is the frequency with which those places will have the artist back? Because again, in our world, if it's hard tickets, they're going to have them back as much
yeah.
as many times as they're selling tickets versus the fine arts thing is not quite the same. It's like, there's no rule about it, but it's pretty unlikely that that's one season to another season to another season a fine arts organization would feature the same artist.
Yeah. I liken it very much like that, like the fine art approach, because Look, the reality is, again, like there are very few outlets and there are few writers. And in the end, like the ratio of artists and musicians and people that are seeking coverage and publicists, not to mention, I mean, I think like a recent study was like there's like 7 publicists for every journalist. I mean, it's literally insane. So
Oh,
it's like,
wow.
yeah, it's wild. So if you have like that is so unbalanced, right? It's like how on earth can a publication rationalize putting the same artist on the cover, even if they are a superstar? I mean, literally, and this is sometimes going to be a hard discussion, I think, for artists to kind of like have where it's like, where you get all of this success, but to replicate that success after every single, like, one album does amazing, the next album does amazing, they do great. Eventually, like, there is going to be some, like, a fall off just because, like, they can't possibly sustain that certain level of high visibility consistently in this world because of what it is. If you're Taylor Swift or Beyonce, that's completely different, but that's not the universe we're in. And you know this better than most people about what the audience is for this and how small in the end, in the grand scheme of things, the audience for this music actually is. And I think that's something to keep in mind. We are talking about a sliver of the market. So, in order for the New York Times to rationalize featuring the same artist again, within like even a 5 year period, I mean, it's hard to do that. It is there's just not enough to go around. And it kind of just like, you sort of have to like pick your kind of your battles every campaign where it's like, okay, like what is the priority for this campaign? If we've gotten like these these magazine covers for this one, and now 2 years later, we're going back with them with something else. I mean, it again doesn't matter who you are. Like the readers are going to be like, why are you putting this artist back on here again? We just read about them, so I have to explain that to artists all the time where it's like, well, Downbeat has, covered my last one. And, well, Downbeat, they did a beat feature on me like 5 years ago. And now they covered, they reviewed my album this time. Like, I think now I should get a cover. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, sure, in theory, maybe, but also like, no, like, that's just not how this works
Mhm.
because there's so much to go around and like everyone has to kind of like get in the pot, so it really is not so much like, okay, like, if this cover sold like, thousands more magazines, okay, maybe, but that's just not the world we're in anymore. On top of that, a couple things about jazz specifically, nostalgia always sells. I've had many editors tell me that when they have like like a Ella Fitzgerald or, Miles or, even like something that's like Cecil Taylor, not like super, super mainstream, but well known on the cover of their magazines, they tend to sell more than if they have a contemporary artist, no matter who it is.
Mm.
I've been told this many times, and that's because jazz to the general public is actually thought of as a nostalgia act, depending on where you are. And so that is why those tend to do well. So now you're not even competing with just like living people, you're also competing with dead people. So, it's like, it is crazy. So that's hard. That's very hard to explain. And then the other part of it is just like at these organizations, like the jazz people don't exist. Like there isn't a full-time staff writer at the New York Times who only covers jazz anymore. Like they've gone away with that. There isn't even like, like monthly, there used to be like weekly listings that would include like one jazz concert, a week. That is gone. Now it's like monthly lineup. Maybe you'll get one jazz gig in there. New Yorker doesn't have anybody doing jazz with regularity anymore in the listings. Like it's all this stuff. So if you got all this, like, what frequency can they feature artists? I mean, not that frequent, So when you get that New York Times profile, like, savor it because it could be a while until the next one comes, is what I
Right.
like to remind people. It's just the way it is.
Yep. Yep. Okay. We've covered a lot. I guess just to kind of wrap up here, what are some projects you're currently working on that you're excited about that folks should know about who are listening?
Yeah. So for the sake of not leaving anybody out, I'm gonna literally pull up my calendar, make sure. So this month has a lot of good stuff. So I have this great project. Well, today, literally today, John Pizzarelli released a Tony Bennett like tribute project that he put together, which is really good. I have to say, I've really been enjoying working that project. It's a little different for me, and it's been fun. So we have that. On Friday, I have a project with Brian Lynch with Charles McPherson that's coming out, and Samara Joy's on a couple of tracks with that one. So that one's cool. I've got Ben Wendell coming out this month. I have an album from Willie Rodriguez, Ingrid Lobrock, and Leo Genovese coming out also on the same day on Sunnyside. We have Javier Nero Jazz Orchestra, April Varner, Aubrey Johnson, and this group from Chicago called Entre Amigos. So a pretty like vast mix, like people like Brian Lynch and John Pizzarelli that have been out here. We have like some weird music, like what Willie's project is, and then like some more conventional stuff that's like April Varner and the big band. So it's really like wide ranging. So that's all this month, and then like down the line, we've got Julia Keefe, Indigenous Big Band, is going to be amazing. I know that's a project
Yep.
that's near and dear to you guys, but that is very exciting. New Jazz Underground also have a project out in May, and then we have Lakeisha will have a project coming out in June. So we'll be working together, which is great. But I'm really excited about what we have this year. Every year, I feel very, very like proud of my roster. I look at it at the end of the year and I'll see like, we'll do like 70, 80 releases a year. And I look at that and I'm like, we have such a like some good shit here,
That's a lot. That's great. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I usually feel like for the most part, I'm like, we did good by these people. Sometimes there's always like a couple projects where I'm like, oh, I wish we could have gotten more, but I usually feel like, yeah, I feel like we did good work for them. So yeah, a lot of really good stuff coming up and I'm excited about them. It's a
Yeah.
lot of fun. Yeah.
Oh, this has been great. Where can people go to connect with you if they want to learn more about the services you offer?
Yeah, my website is lydialiebman.com. And, we have, there's an Instagram there that I'm really trying to stay on top of, but I'm sort of like not been so good lately. I'm trying. But yeah, the website is a good place to start. I will say that emailing me is always the best if you're interested in working with us. The email on my website might not work intentionally. I couldn't say out
It's a
loud.
fake email address.
It's actually, it's just like a full inbox that I haven't ever really dealt with. It's just because I got so overwhelmed. I learned my lesson. I'm sure you guys get this too. I mean, I was getting so inundated with stuff and stuff that had nothing to do with like what I offer. Like I'm some like just random stuff, and I was missing like the important stuff. So that's something I have to deal with. I have to figure out like a better system of dealing with possible incoming stuff. It's just overwhelming, but.
Mhm.
But you can find my email out there. It is out there because it's on so many artists' websites. So you can find it.
Yep.
But yeah, that's where you can find me. And yeah, much love to EFP because you guys are truly among the best booking agencies in our whole scene. I tell that to everybody, and I just think that you guys are the best. So
Thank you for saying that. That's
it's
really
the
kind of
truth.
you.
It is the truth. You guys are really what's up. And I think that artists would be any artist that gets to work with you for real. I really they're really lucky because you guys are great and you really do great by the artist. And that is something that, it's hard in our field to like find other professionals that that feel that way. And
Well, thank you. And
you guys
and
are
same with what you do, which is why we keep recommending you.
likewise. Yeah. We have a good system here.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's been a pleasure. And it's been fun to chat with you. Yeah.
Yeah, likewise. Take care.